Do you know about the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and their advisories and alerts that they put out all the time? Maybe you've heard of CISA or CISA, that Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, but seriously, these advisories and alerts are awesome. They put out some really cool info, and it's all information and details about current attacks, threats, hacks across the cybersecurity landscape, ransomware, vulnerabilities, and exploits. They dive into a lot of the nitty-gritty, even getting into some of the MITRE attack frameworks so you can map this to specific tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, and look for indicators of compromise, IOCs. Along with that, they even track a lot of these threats and add them to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. And if you haven't seen this KEV, or KEV, the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, this is another awesome resource. This showcases current CVEs and vulnerabilities that are actively being taken advantage of and compromised in the wild across different organizations and companies, and things that you absolutely need to be aware of. The thing is, though, it is just for awareness, right? It's just the information. It's an advisory. After all, it's words and text on the screen. But that can't easily be turned into action. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was something that would be able to test for these threats? Hey, the vulnerabilities and exploits, the hacker tradecraft. What if you could kind of put that against your environment and validate and verify, are your security protections and mechanisms actually working as they should? And wouldn't it be even more awesome if it wasn't just one test at a standalone point in time? What if there were something that would be continuously monitoring your environment for these threats and against your level of risk? So in this video, I want to show you something that I think is pretty cool. This is Prelude. Prelude Security, Prelude Detect. It's knowing with certainty that your defenses actually protect you against the current threats in the cybersecurity landscape. And it's using a lot of these CISA advisories to verify that. And maybe another perk, hey, you can see this hooks up really well with your EDR, or your endpoint detection and response platform. Take a look. Oh, compatible with CrowdStrike, Microsoft Defender, I believe that's for business, the cloud endpoint, and SentinelOne and other leading defensive controls. And I don't mean to drag you through this here, but look, I think it's kind of cool where you're pairing a lot of the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency along with DHS or the FBI and other folks that do good stuff in cybersecurity to keep you aware and in the know, but you can actually put that into action. And you can put it in your production environment. And I know that's a little bit scary to hear, right? Run it in production, but no, seriously, like this is something I want to show you. It's small, simple, easy, and just minuscule. You can put it in your production environment. And hey, let me be straight up. This is a sponsored video, but honestly, like seriously, I think this is a really cool and awesome tool. And Prelude is pretty transparent. They say like, hey, if you want to kick the tires, if you want to explore Detect on your own, you can roll out a free account and scale to 25 different endpoints. So for a super small environment, I don't know, maybe this thing's free. But you know what? Let's do it. Let's dive in. Let's go ahead and get started for free and see Prelude in action. And this is it. Hey, this is the dashboard, looking slick, looking fancy, and you can see all of these CISA advisories up at the top here. You can, hey, maybe view the advisories or take a look at the different responses, the tests that have been ran across your endpoints and your hosts, and you can see all of the tests, all of the verifications and validations over on that left-hand side. But of course, you might have been able to see it here. You know what? Look, this is just using demo data. If you want to go ahead and jump in, use your own host, sign up for an account, and you'll add your own probes to test your defenses at scale. So let me tell you about that, because I know you might be thinking, oh, great, another agent, something else we have to manage, something we have to keep track of in our environments. But it's not exactly all of that, because Prelude does something a little bit different, where their agent is not strictly an agent in the strict sense of the word. They call these probes because they're super tiny, like 60 lines of code, things that will just, passively wait and wait and wait and wait until it gets some of those instructions and tasks to now go run a test and validate your security defenses. Let's see this put to work though. I'm going to sign up for an account and I'll just enter my email here. And hey, okay, just a quick email to verify your account, maybe some credentials if you want to be able to log into other spots and bring in some teammates. And just like that, we're already in the action. We can install a probe on our endpoint to run a test against this advisory, like exploiting Atlassian, whatever, I don't know, Jira or Confluence thing was up in the news the other day. Here's our specific account ID that we'll be able to slap into our probe, and we'll just download whatever operating system we want this to run on. Super cool. This is pretty pretty well cross-platform. You'll see support for Windows, Linux, and Mac, and the nerdy part of this is, if we dig into the code that Prelude is super transparent about, we'll get to see some of these tests and what they look like in their source code, but it's written in Golang. So hey, I've put together a little environment for us to be able to play with this. Kick the tires here. I've got a Windows 11 virtual machine with Office installed that is running just flat, classic, vanilla Windows 11, just Office added, and Microsoft Defender, or the free built-in host-based antivirus and firewall. Windows Defender is active. Alongside that, I have a development machine that I like to use where Defender is just completely ripped out and no longer functioning. I've got an Ubuntu instance, and I actually have the Move It Transfer service that was unpatched and exploitable from the recent Move It Transfer CVE 2023 whatever exploits. I want to dive into the probes a little bit more, but you know what? First, I want to get something rolling with a Windows probe. I'll go ahead and download this MSI file, and I'll run this against the unpatched Move It machine. Let me see if I can just easily paste in this MSI file. Looking good. We have that detect installer for our probe, and let's see it in action. You know the drill, just kind of clicking through next. Yep, looking good. We'll fire it up. We'll be sure to paste in our registration string and install. Now, note, I'm going to get into the code and show you how this probe works, but just like that, we're done. It's already set up. And okay, looking back at the dashboard, we can see that one host has been added. You can see this over here. We do have our actual Move It Transfer server. And of course, it only got tested against that CVE for Atlassian, but that is not really applicable to us because, hey, we don't have that Confluence data center and server installed. And that's kind of slick. Hey, I don't know if you got to see, but as I was digging into, hey, some of those tests or those verified security tests, or VSTs that they like to be called, you can actually check out some of the information and really what it does. It tests whether or not, oh, it's vulnerable to this exploit here, maybe some Spring4Shell, Log4j, whatever the heck, I don't know, we're looking at, but they tell you exactly what it does and the fact that it, look, doesn't modify or change the system whatsoever. It validates whether or not it is protected or unprotected and offers this resolution to say, you know what, just update if you need to and validate that your EDR solution is configured to do what it does. Coolest part here though, we can download the source code and see exactly what that test is. Let me go ahead, we'll export that, I'll see it in action here. And remember, it's Go source code, it's Golang. Here, I'll open it up in a text editor and look at this. You can see the specific identifier for that test, the name for the CVE, a unit that it might be working with, when it was created, and everything that's necessary to check for the vulnerability and how it does it. Whether it's relevant, honestly, if it even has that web server up and action, it performs the test. So hey, I can get into the activity and you can see all of the hosts that I've added. Now only I have that Move It Transfer server, but let's throw in a couple more, right? So it looks like that Linux download is for an RPM and maybe a CentOS or Fedora Red Hat based distribution. I'm rolling that Ubuntu one, and my old Windows 11 with Office is seemingly in a boot loop with automatic repair. So, you know, classic Windows, I don't know if we're gonna get that one in action. But to be honest, I don't think you really need to watch me, just install it on different hosts. If you are using CrowdStrike, you can deploy it out to like everything super duper easy. But with that transparency and like everything that Prelude does, let me tell you a little bit more about the probe because it's literally just open source. You can check it out. We can dig into it. This link here will take you to their GitHub. Here you can dig into everything that they're up to. You can take a look at these shell probes. I guess it's called Raindrop as a cool code name for Windows, and Nocturnal over on the Linux and Mac side. And you can go see everything that Prelude is up to. I don't know if we want to dig into more of their libraries, everything that they offer with Detect, but you also have other functionality that might be present in the whole org. And digging through the source code on GitHub is cool, but I did want to show you their documentation, for one thing because it's gorgeous, and because we can showcase and see all the stuff. Here you can learn a little bit more about their continuous security testing mentality and mindset, and everything that Detect does and is. They offer a bit more of a blurb on endpoint security, hey, maybe a quote from CISA in there, some good info to know, but really, we probably want to dig into some of those security tests, the actual atomic granular validation and verification exercises that we're trying on our endpoints. These are these verified security tests. These are production-ready versions of looking for TTPs, tactics, techniques, procedures, the things you might have uncovered in those CISA advisories or even part of the MITRE attack framework. I gotta say, hey, some of the head honchos over at Prelude came from MITRE and wrote like Caldera, another one of those phenomenal and fantastic testing suites. But look, they show you the source code. You can dig into all of it. You can even write your own. They do have this very cool thing called recipes, where you can actually see some examples like, hey, looking for Mimikatz, and that's awesome interface where you can actually dig into, you know what are each of the important pieces of this code snippet here, and how is it doing what it's doing and why. Now, something that I am especially interested in, and maybe you are too, because look, we like manually just ran, that Atlassian Confluence test. But truthfully, we want this thing to just run on its own. We want it to continuously be looking for these tests and these VSTs, verified security tests. So we could put Prelude into autopilot mode, where it will just see, hey, anything that comes out, whether it's CISA's advisory or other details, it'll run these new tests for about 3 days and try to check in. It will automatically run all of the tests across all of the probes on all of your environment and infrastructure. That's awesome. And remember, this is all done by the probe, not an agent, but a probe, a low resource temporary process that enables the endpoint testing with those VSTs. You could dig into some of the environment variables and some of the other nerdy stuff to get this up and running, and you can use their command line interface to even create some more, write those on your own if you wanted to play with things. But look, let's dig into the recipe, because this is the curl code if you're running over on the Linux side, and Windows, the PowerShell code that we just saw fire up. But look at this curl. It's like 30 lines of code. All it does is grab it from, hey, maybe their AWS structure, so that they're able to grab the new tests, and PowerShell does the very, very same thing. Invoke web requests, whatever it needs to be able to pull things down in this small atomic method. You can do that on Windows, you can do it on Linux, you can even do it in some containers, but of course, if you wanted to hook this up with some other tooling, it does have partner integration with stuff like Splunk, I think, to get a little bit more alerts and info out there, Microsoft Defender, CrowdStrike, Vector, and Sentinel-1. But I don't want to beat you over the head with documentation. Let's go play in the dashboard one more time, and let's go see, hey, can we run more of those tests and even see if it can validate that move it transfer is totally exploitable. Because don't forget, only the probes that we've added right now have just ran this singular test for that Atlassian thing that isn't really going to be applicable here. But let's try to run all the tests. Take a look, right? Back on our dashboard, we have already tested this Atlassian thing up against our endpoints, but we could dig into any of these other advisories. And if you wanted to check out some of the responses, this is neat. You've got the MITRE attack techniques in the mix here. Of course, you could download the source code, but especially for ransomware, look, it's not going to end up executing ransomware, right? That's just not going to happen, not going to encrypt, detonate, whatever. But it will state, look, this malware's defanged. It's going to exit immediately if it's run. It will extract the malware, but just wait for defenses to kick in. Hey, your EDR, your security mechanisms, your AV, whatever the case may be. Check if it was quarantined or not. Now, I'm super curious, and we can look through all these other advisories. There's tons of stuff in here. I'm sure they'll see something for Move It, and ooh, this one looks good. You can dig into the Clop ransomware, and this shows the TTPs for that Move It transfer exploitation, but we can check out the advisory. This is pretty slick because Prelude has their rendition of, hey, the information that is tactical from the advisory, some of the insights, some of the information on the tests here, but ultimately we should schedule this test and see it in action. This will bring us over to the schedule page, part of the navigation here with the dashboard and our activity. But here you can see, look, we can roll through any tests that we want and pause tests. Of course, autopilot is enabled. That's what we wanted here. But can I see? Look, let me just try to click on everything and then schedule all of them. Let me go ahead and click on schedule. We can run this as frequently as we want, and we'll do it on all the hosts. Let's fire it up. Okay, they should all be on the clock here. And honestly, look, this is kind of cool because you can just, even this page is sweet. You can dig through all the stuff that it showcases in a list here. But I'm super curious. Let's let this thing go. And I don't know if it's going to run it all right now. We'll go back to the dashboard and see if there's anything already in action. But no, I guess not quite yet. We'll give it some time and see when these things kick off. Oh, okay. Actually, we have some results. I let this sit for a little bit of time, but looks like a lot of the tests had come through. I don't know if all of them have yet, but we can see for our individual hosts, there are some new protection statuses. So let's go tune in to our Move It transfer server. Looks like there are 74 events out of the couple of tests that we ran here, and we can see all the stuff that is protected or what is not relevant or what's disallowed, and this is pretty cool. Oh, here we can see one for Mimikatz. Let's take a look. This test drops a Mimikatz executable to disk and then attempts to execute it. Mimikatz is post-exploitation tool. We've chatted about it all the time. This only performs a local dump of credentials and does not attempt to do anything with them. Okay, looks like it just drops it to disk, waits to see if Defender or any other antivirus or EDR will block it. Now, bear in mind, on our Windows 11 machine, we don't have Defender on. It's ripped out. But move it, hey, it should just be fine. It'll nuke it out of the orbit. Looks like this was protected. It did go ahead and succeed. Our defenses were working as they should there, and that was disallowed. A couple of the other ones here, though, we can see maybe a rat rootkit or an agent Tesla. That one seems to be unprotected. Here's another pop-up Trojan, Lockbit ransomware. Let's dig into that. This test drops defanged Lockbit, tries to fire it up, waits for 3 seconds to gauge defenses, and oh, okay, it seemingly was not protected against. I guess Defender didn't track that one. We can go investigate that, but honestly, that's the stuff that can tip us off and help us go analyze our security posture. This is pretty cool to go look through, and thankfully, hey, it would just run every single day, right? This is continuous monitoring, and I'm super curious, do we have the one specific to Move It? Oh, Cobalt Strike is in here, though. Here's a Cobalt Strike Trojan, then that did not get protected. Even on Windows Server 2019, that's the box that's running that Move It transfer server. Where is the Clop Move It transfer exploit? There's some stuff for Docker. That's obviously not going to be relevant, and I'm glad they're tracking that. Where is the one for Move It? Oh, it's right here. CVE 2023-34362, and it's not relevant. Interesting. This checks whether it's vulnerable to that vulnerability with Clop ransomware for the Progress Software Move It transfer exploitation. What does this do? How did this not fire? Oh, it gets the external IP address of the endpoint, so to see if this is publicly accessible. And that's not the case because this is a virtual machine inside of, my local network that is not out on the internet. So interesting. Okay, that was just probably the decision of, look, is this publicly accessible and exploitable from a distance? But it's not. Granted, I am still running the unpatched version of Move It on that server. So peculiar. And honestly, look, again, we can dig into the source code. And this is the coolest part, right? Because we could manipulate this, we could modify this, we could tweak and tune the test to whatever we want. But I'm fascinated in that, okay, yeah, look, they're checking for an external IP address. Maybe we could manipulate that and see if there's any other capability here. We can scroll through a whole lot more of these, but looks like you can see, hey, the stuff that either Defender or the antivirus and protection engine will hit, or the operating system itself. And note, hey, we got our Windows 11 machine down here. My face is in the way over that host here. It looks like on this Windows 11 host, the virtual machine here for just the workstation, only 10 of the events or the tests finished running thus far, like just right now as I'm looking at it. Of course, more will continue on, and we have this on the daily schedule. But remember, Defender is not on this. There is no endpoint security, antivirus, whatever. All the stuff that is either, hey, disallowed, I see that seatbelt execution, that's disallowed just thanks to the benefit of the operating system or whatever else might happen. But other things that aren't relevant, or of course, all of the malware attempts, they're just cruising right through. They're unprotected here. Benefit of this, though, is if we go take another look at the schedule, all this stuff is going to keep going tomorrow and however long else we want it to go. It is in autopilot mode, so as new advisories and new threats get released, they'll be tracked and added. Testing on all of our endpoints, which is super cool. And if we actually dig into the dashboard, hey, we can see all of the results for those different advisories that we've been kind of cooking up against here. Let me click into one of these advisories, and the dashboard and this timeline is going to be like the coolest thing, right? Because again, this is meant to be continuous and over time. So as you protect things, you harden your systems, you apply patches, you do whatever you need to do, we can kind of tweak this and tune it so all of your hosts and all the endpoints you're protecting will, over time, you'll see the progression here. Obviously, just me running this at one singular day, that is just not the flashiest thing, but it will be if you kind of keep cruising with this. And you can see all the results for anything specific here. Ooh, proxy shell. I'm curious what they're doing for that one. That's kind of slick. That is the gist, though, of, hey, Prelude Detect in action, showcasing some of those probes, showcasing all of those verified security tests and what it might be able to go assess and determine for your environment, for your hosts. And you know what? Look, it's so small. It's so minimal. You can run this in production. I know it's kind of fascinating to say, but it's what you're supposed to do so you know your real attack surface. And hey, if you wanted to, you can keep hacking on this stuff. You know what? You could dig into some of the command line interface or even grab some of their software development kits so you can see all the stuff that they're up to. And of course, GitHub, as I showed you before. But it's worth trying this thing alongside CrowdStrike if maybe that's your EDR of choice, or SentinelOne or Defender for Business. I think that's the right wording. MDE, I forget what they're calling it now. They keep changing the name. Now, one way or another, I hope you can still really appreciate this mentality or the perspective here. Look, you do want to know with absolute certainty if your protective mechanisms, if your security defenses are actually protecting you over time, continuously, every day, day in and day out. And hey, that's it. That is Prelude, at least at a small scale. Hey, just us trying it with a couple different hosts, kicking the tires, throwing off some of those tests, and seeing what probes are going to do in action here. I hope you thought that was cool. I hope you thought it was pretty slick. I, for one, think that's an awesome utility, and I don't know, maybe it's really cool. Let's pit this against our EDR or your AV engine of choice and just see, is it doing everything that it should? Is it catching what it should? This feels like a kind of different outlook than, hey, you just look through the event logs in a SIEM solution, right? Because that's a little bit dry of just, oh, one line after the other, JSON entry results. This is a bit easier to see it over time for a specific set that you can keep manipulating and adding to. And it's going to be added to anyway, all thanks to Autopilot and new releases, new advisories, and new alerts coming from CISA, that cybersecurity infrastructure and security agency, and other great stuff that can add to security. With that, I know I've been rambling for way too long. I know I'm yapping, but seriously, I think this is really cool. I hope you do too. And if you're interested, hey, you can kick the tires just as well. Link in the video description. Go over, check out, see what Prelude Security is up to. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, YouTube algorithm stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.